welcome back to another episode of Warriors Off-Road. Today I'm going to show you some basics on oil change for the HISUN 250. Now this engine is out of the chassis, but this is what you would see if you were looking down from the bottom up to the bottom of the engine through the chassis. Normally there'll be a skid plate here and you'll see an access area where you can access these plugs. So there's a big difference on two of these plugs, and a lot of people ask me which one do I use. So that's a great question. For the very first oil change, you will need to open up this one. Now these are already loose by me, so I'm just using for demonstration purposes. This is a 19 millimeter, this is a 17 millimeter. For the very first oil change, or if you have any kind of engine catastrophe or damage to the engine, or want to inspect for damage, you'll take this side off. Now there's a spring in here, and there's also a little screen. Now this one you can see there's actually metal in here. This one has had a blown transmission, which we're fixing right now. So you're able to inspect it and see some of the debris in the transmission down here. So again, for the very first oil change, you want to take this out and inspect the screen for any metal shavings. As a brand new motor, it's going to break down. And there'll be an O-ring in here. Now the O-ring's usually good for a few times before you have to change it, so I wouldn't worry about it for once or twice. Now, if you're just going to do the regular oil change, this is 17 millimeter. You would break this loose, and of course it would be laying down, it'd go into a drain pan. But don't forget that there's actually an aluminum washer down here. Now what this washer does, it's actually called a crush washer, and there's a reason for that. When you have this down there, and after the oil's all drained out, and you put this back in here and tighten it down to the correct torque specifications, when you tighten it down, all that energy transferred from the wrench down to this nut is transferred into the washer, not the threads. If you continue to use the old washer over and over again, when you torque this down, all that bite is now going into the threads, and you can end up stripping this down if it's not done correctly. So it's literally like a 40-cent washer at your local motorcycle dealership or power sports dealership. Just take this one down there, match it up, grab 4 or 5, leave them in your toolbox. But make sure you change that washer every time you do a drain oil change. And this goes to say on every vehicle you do, whether it's your car, truck, motorcycle, ATV, UTV, whatever it is, you want to make sure you always change that washer, and there's a reason why. It's designed to take the torque, and it crushes when you tighten it down, so it doesn't pull too hard on the threads. This one you'll tighten down to the specs, and they'll be found in the service manual inside the factory service manual. I'll tell you the specs on each one of them. Now once that oil is drained, a lot of people say, well, the manual says check the dipstick, and the dipstick will give me that information. But here's the problem. The older ones don't have a dipstick. They have just a fill cap. This is where you fill the oil. Okay, what they do have is down here is called a sight glass. Now on the sight glass, what you want to do, and the specs in the manual will tell you how much oil to put in here, but basically it's about 1.2 quarts or 1.1 quarts, and you'll see the oil come up. You want to get that oil up there about 75 to 80% of the window. Then you'll know it's filled. If you continue to fill this up and you can't see any more oil because it's full, you could theoretically keep filling this up and not know it, and you could actually hydraulically lock your vehicle or the engine. So make sure that when it's setting level, you look in this sight glass, and that's how you can tell how tall the oil is supposed to be. Again, just to about the tip there, almost close. And if you look real close in the window, you can see when it's clean, you can see pretty good in there. Now when you get oil and it's dirty, this usually is all black and it's real hard to see, and I get that. But you should have no more than 1.2 quarts when you change the oil in here. On the newer ones, it's a similar setup on the covers, but what they've done is they've put an extension tube on here, and then they've redesigned the cover. So they put an extension on here, and then they've actually added a dipstick that does go inside there. So the older ones that don't have a dipstick, they're smooth and flush like this. The newer ones sit up about another 3 inches. So that's how you can tell the difference on the two. Now on the right side of the engine, you'll notice here is the oil filter itself. Now this has already been loosened up for me. So you'll take the proper tool, you'll loosen up the oil filter, you'll take it off, you'll dispose of it properly, and make sure that the O-ring comes off with this and it's not on side of here. When you get your new oil filter, you want to make sure again the surface is clean, there's no debris inside of here. What you're going to do is take some fresh oil, pour it a little bit inside of here, and then I slowly turn it around, letting the oil absorb into the element itself. I'll take some more of that fresh oil on my finger and lightly spin it right around the oil filter like that. Then I put it back on here, bring it down, tighten it as hard as I can with my hand and give it just a little turn. That's about all you need to put an oil filter on there. No tools necessary. You start putting tools on here, you have the possibility of getting that O-ring squished out and creating a massive oil leak. Alright, any questions, please give us a call. warriorsoffroad.com. Thanks and have a good day.